Okay, so we're at the top of the hour. Let's get started with this. So just so everyone knows, I'm Dan Jones. I'm a technologist here at Hamina Wireless. I don't know what that means either. But there's a QR code where you can scan that and then connect with me on LinkedIn and we can go from there. So today we're going to be talking about spectrum analyzers and what they are, how they work, when do we need them, how do we use them, that type of stuff. So it's a nice kind of short session. We'll aim for, half an hour all in, including questions and things like that. So yeah, please do feel free to kind of ask questions as we go through. So hopefully people know kind of what Hamina is and what we do and things like that. So kind of Wi-Fi design, troubleshooting tool, and also kind of live analysis as well. So what is a spectrum analyzer? And kind of what they're used for, right? Well, spectrum analyzer is there to measure and show you the kind of energy on the air. So how does it work? Well, effectively, depending on the spectrum analyzer, but you'll get something that will scan through the frequencies, measure how much energy it can see on that space, and then put it into like a bin, right? So you'll get these kind of lines, like you can see here, you've kind of got these things where it's kind of sweeping through and then it will chuck stuff in. Now, different types of spectrum analyzer will kind of do that differently and things like that. And it's not just a wireless thing, right? You can get spectrum analyzers that work on cables and things like that, and they'll show you all these different things. Now, with Wi-Fi, we're kind of focused on kind of three bands, right? The 2.4, the 5, and the 6 gigahertz band, and the kind of frequencies within those bands that we're kind of looking to kind of look at. So what a spectrum analyzer will do is it will go through those frequencies, it will sweep through kind of one at a time like this, get through the frequency, measure the energy in that particular space, and then visually be able to show you that, right? Um, what a spectrum analyzer is not, I don't even know why that's there, but I just wanted to kind of explain what spectrum analyzer isn't. Yeah. So why are spectrum analyzers useful? Well, the main kind of reason why we would use a spectrum analyzer, there's two things, right? One is to measure the noise that you've got in environment. Obviously, the spectrum that we use for Wi-Fi is unlicensed, right? Anyone can broadcast something on that in that spectrum. So one of the things that we can use a spectrum analyzer for is to see, okay, how noisy is this environment? Is it like where I am here, where I'm kind of out in the middle of nowhere? There shouldn't be that much interference, or am I in the middle of like a busy city, or am I in a manufacturing plant or something like that where we've got equipment that's giving off noise within that kind of frequency as well. So one of the things that we can do is actually measure the noise for the background noise. And the way that I kind of explain this to people is a bit like if you go into a meeting room and you shut the door, it blocks out all the noise, it blocks out all the background stuff. So now you can kind of just talk to each other relatively calmly over a table and things like that. Whereas if you go into, say, like a bar or a pub or something like that, you can be stood right next to someone, but you're having to like shout and scream over all the background noise that's happening. So one of the things that the spectrum analyzer can do is visually show you what that noise floor is like. Obviously, with Wi-Fi, what we're trying to get is a good signal to noise ratio, right? So we want the noise to be low, we want the signal to be high, and that will give us the kind of cleanest air, as it were, to be able to send data over the air, for us to be able to pack as much data as we possibly can into one transmission, rather than having to, if we've got a low SNR, having to do lots of very basic kind of transfers of energy. So it can help you kind of see what the noise was. Why is that helpful? Well, one of the things that you can do within the planner here, right? You can come in and you can simulate things like the noise floor. So if you know what the noise floor is, you can adjust this so you can show and be able to see when you do your roaming around with your particular client. If we're in, say, 5 gigahertz here, we can adjust the noise floor. If we know that the noise floor is much higher, now we can see what the impact will be on in terms of like data rate and things like that, and what MCS we can expect to get. So if the noise floor is really high, you can see how the experience gets really, really bad for a particular client. If we bring that back down, we can see the kind of data rate gets much, much better. So that's one of the reasons why having a spectrum analyzer is useful, is finding out that noise floor, being able then to design around what your noise floor is in a particular space. But also one of the other things is to find sources of interference. Now, obviously in 6 GHz, that's less of a problem. 5 GHz is not that much of a problem, mainly only the Uni 3 band, so the kind of top channels in there. Sometimes you'll see things like the presence sensors. So when you walk into a room, what you would see on a spectrum analyzer are like short spikes in that space, and you'd see them happen there. Where we used to use spectrum analyzers quite a lot was in 2.4, because we only have the three non-overlapping channels. And you would get things like baby monitors, microwaves, things like that would cause a lot of noise, even things like Bluetooth or, remote control vehicles, things like that would use that part of the spectrum, and they would cause a lot of noise and interference. And then you'd be able to see those things. Now that we've kind of, for the most part, retired 2.4 just for kind of IoT devices where it's kind of best effort, we don't need anything kind of real time. That increased noise floor, that increased kind of retry rates and things that are needed in 2.4 become less of a problem as we move more of our kind of client, kind of everyday traffic to 5 GHz and 6 GHz. So how do you use this data, right? So this is the kind of two different views that we have within OnSite. So on the left-hand side here, if you've plugged in the Oscium Lucid, which is like a spectrum analyzer that you can purchase and connect to the Nomad, then what you'll see here is a bit like this. You'll see the kind of raw energy that's on the air. So you can see here, we're between channel 81 and 85. You can see we've got some energy on the air. You can see on this kind of bigger 80 megahertz wide channel we've got here, you can see all the different parts of the energy that are fitting into that kind of ziggurat that we've got. And you can see exactly what's kind of going on. And then to the left-hand side and kind of all the way through, you can see what we would call the noise floor, right? So just almost like the background stuff that's going. So it looks like it's got good kind of background, low noise. You can see that the Wi-Fi is happening in there. So that's what you'll see if you plug in a spectrum analyzer to the Nomad. If you don't,
Dan, can I
yeah, go for it.
pose a question to you?
Yeah.
With 6 gigahertz being so clean, why do you have noise there constantly on every channel?
Uh, it's just the background stuff, I guess. What would you say, Andrew?
I, I was fascinated to learn several years ago that the Earth itself generates noise. So we can never truly get rid of noise because the Earth, and I guess its magnetic sphere or whatever, generates noise everywhere. So we'll never
Yeah.
get no noise. You'll always see some noise from just the Earth's core.
Yeah, and I guess if you had a more like sensitive spectrum analyzer, you would be able to measure that noise better, right? But what we tend to find is that spectrum analyzers we use for like Wi-Fi tend to kind of understand that, at around kind of neg 95, neg 92, neg 90, there tends to be noise there all the time. So we we just kind of calibrate it to just show just above that, right? Um, Cool. So if we don't have a spectrum analyzer plugged in, what we try and do is give you some useful information anyway. So as you can see on the right-hand side, what we've got here is what we kind of weirdly call non-spectrum spectrum view, right? And so what are we showing you here? Well, you can see the different channels that we've got. So 1, 6, and 11. You can see all the different APs that are on those channels. And what you can also see is different colors in those things. So those colors are showing you how busy the AP is reporting that channel is, right? So you can see here, this is in a hotel chain. And effectively what we're seeing is, green is probably okay. Amber is getting to the point where you're going to, have reduced performance. And then red is like, it's probably not going to work that well in this space. Let me just go back to this thing. Here we go. So you can see this working now, right? So you can zoom in, you can see what's going on, and what you're getting is a live representation of how busy the APs themselves are kind of telling you that that space is. So you can see there that 2.4 was kind of much more kind of utilized, and then kind of moving over to 5 gigahertz is less utilized. So all that being said, obviously your iPhone, your laptop, things like that, they're not going to have a spectrum analyzer in them, right? It's something that we might use as engineers to kind of see what's going on, to be able to do things like channel planning and stuff like this. So what do clients use? Well, clients use effectively what we're showing you here. Clients use this QBSS load, part of the kind of as APs are sending out kind of here I am, this is the network that I've got, this is what channel I'm on, these are the different SSIDs I've got. What they also send through is a little bit of information that says, and this is how busy I am, right? So as you start looking at these things, this is how the clients are trying to make a kind of better understanding of which AP they should go to, right? Because in Wi-Fi, it's the clients that make those decisions. So the client is going to an AP and they're saying, hey, I'm looking for the Hilton Honors SSID. And then they'll get a bunch of responses back saying, okay, yes, I've got that. I'm on this channel. Yes, I've got that. I've got that. I've got that. So what about now if in this instance here where you've got lots of APs that are above that kind of decent threshold that the Wi-Fi client might want to connect to? Well, what will happen is the client will then go, okay, great. Well, I've got an AP that's right here. It's really loud. It's really next to me. This is probably a good one to go to. I've got another one over there that's a bit further away, and I've got one that's miles away, but it's still above that trigger threshold that I have, that roaming threshold. So say it's neg 70 or neg 75, something like that. It will say, right, I've got enough signal that that's going to be okay. So then how do they decide out of those three which one they should connect to? Well, it used to be that they would, just go for the loudest one, for instance. But that's not always the best AP to go to because, for instance, if you've got an AP that's right next to you, so it's really loud, you've got a good SNR, but it's busy 50% of the time, that's going to be really difficult to actually get your information sent and your information received, right? If I've got an AP that's a bit further away, that's got lower signal, but still good enough that I've got good SNR, so I've still got a decent distance between the noise and the signal that I'm getting, it might be better for me to join an AP that's a bit further away, that's only utilized 2% of the time. I'm much more likely to get my information sent and received from that AP that's further away, but with a much lower utilization. So that's kind of what we're showing you here in this kind of real-time view, right? We're showing you what the APs are reporting of how busy they are, and therefore what your clients are most likely to want to join as they move around the space. So that's what we can show you on the Insight, on the on-site application. But we also have another way of giving you that information too, right? So if you've got a cloud vendor that supports it, we can also show you within the Hermina Planner side of things, we can show you the Wi-Fi coverage, yes, absolutely, but we can also show you the channel utilization. So again, what we're doing now is through the API this time, we're going to the AP and we're saying, okay, how busy are the channels that you're on? So for instance, if we click on this AP, now I've massively reduced this so that it showed up on the map, right? But we can see this AP here, we can see it's kind of all of its kind of details and all that kind of stuff. We can come in, we can see the number of active clients and inactive clients on a particular radio, and we can come across and we can see things like the actual channel utilization that AP is reporting. The nice thing is, because we've got this building that's modeled out, because we've gone and we've done surveys and things like this, right? So we've walked around the space. When I click on an AP, I'm now seeing the actual blast radius of that space. So when we're looking at this now, this is a live heat map of channel utilization within this environment. So I can see without having to go to site, if I've got lots of remote sites all over the place, am I getting to the point where, okay, I need to add in some more APs to give us more kind of airtime, more spectrum for clients to use? Now, obviously, here I've artificially decreased these, right? So this would normally be up at like 50, this might be up at, say, 30%, something like that. And then this might be, okay, anything below 10%, it looks really good. And now you get a much kind of better understanding of what's going on. But I can show you not just what the Wi-Fi is doing, I can also come in and have a look at the non-Wi-Fi. So again, now without having to go to site, I can see, are there non-Wi-Fi sources of interference that are causing problems on my network? Well, here, no, it doesn't look like that, right? So I hover around, I can see down here in the bottom left, I've got no areas where there is percentage of time being taken up by non-Wi-Fi interferers. So is there some non-Wi-Fi interference? Well, yeah, there might be a presence sensor in here, right? But the APs are clever enough that they've all moved away from those channels. They're using the radio resource management that's kind of built into the APs. They've moved away from those channels. They're effectively protecting the clients that are going to connect from having to connect to an AP that might have those sources of interference. And so this is a great way of being able to see, okay, I've got the Wi-Fi, the non-Wi-Fi interference. I can see the different things that are being caused in that space, and all that kind of stuff, right? So again, this is a live view of where I am right now. We can see here I've got different APs on different channels. We've got my SSID. I can go through 6 gigahertz. I can go through 2.4, and I can see all the different kind of things that are causing kind of utilization on the air. This is without a spectrum analyzer. So as you can see here, I'm not seeing what interference there may or may not be on channel 6, but my APs aren't using that channel. So it doesn't matter, if that makes sense. Okay, any questions while I've been kind of doing that? Does that all make sense to people? Cool. I think, Andrew, you're getting on with the questions, aren't you?
As usual, Yeoman's asked a question I can't answer.
Okay.
And it's not a hard question, it's just genuinely something I've not dug into. But he's saying when you've got the spectrum, no spectrum, and you're coloring the bars,
Yeah.
how do you decide what color to make it? We understand it's from the QBSS, but he's like, well, what if there's multiple APs there and one's busy and one's not? How are you coloring that bar?
Yeah. So great question. My understanding is the way that that works is that we're looking over time. So effectively, if you see like where did we have it on 2.4? If you see in here where you've got two like this, one of them is reporting a higher load than the other one, right? Now, why are they doing that? Don't know. Different APs do different things. But the other thing that we have is that these will kind of degrade over time. So if I go back over to 5, and we show you here. So this, if you click on that little thing there, it shows you here what the colors are and how they're working. But yeah, effectively, you might have different colors based on the different APs that are reporting back to you different things that are happening on their AP. Now, obviously, you might have an AP where you've got, say, 3 APs like this, right? You're stood under this one. This AP isn't hearing this third AP that's on the channel, but the middle one is hearing both, right? So that's how you'll get some APs that will kind of say back a higher QBSS load and a lower QBSS load. And that's where having the visual, being able to see it in a visual map instance like this is much more useful because, like I say, you can now see the blast radius of this, right? So if I put this down to 15 and then 20, now you can very visually see the kind of blast radius of that. Now, if we had multiple APs on the same thing, you would see why those APs are reporting different measurements for those QBSS loads. Does that answer the question?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, you had a good example of
No,
2.4.
no, German said. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm sorry. That's my understanding of how we're doing it at the moment. Okay, cool. So Like I say, the clients themselves use this information, right? So that's why we found it as something that's really important to be able to kind of show to you. The, the clients don't have a spectrum analyzer built in. They're not scanning all of the spectrum and making decisions on which AP to go to based on that. They are making the decision based on what they're seeing from this type of thing. So again, for me, the question then comes, okay, so when do I need a spectrum analyzer? If you're saying kind of 90% of the time, 99% of the time, it's the client that's making the decision based on this QBSS load. When do we need a spectrum analyzer? Well, there are some environments, right? Like we've already said, things like manufacturing facilities, things like that, where you've got big bits of equipment that are producing lots of electromagnetic kind of interference and things like that. You'll see that you'll get a raised noise floor, and that can have an impact. It's not that your design will or won't work, but it will have an impact on what kind of data rates your clients will access, right? So do you need a spectrum analyzer for that? Maybe, maybe not in terms of just the noise floor. It's useful to be able to put it into the design tool, like I showed you earlier, where you can then kind of give people a more realistic understanding of the types of data rates they can expect to get. Is it essential? Maybe not. One of the places where it might be essential is if you're getting a lot of interference in a particular environment. So again, if you go back to something like manufacturing, where you've got a big block of channels that are just causing, that your APs just cannot use that channel, that's really useful to be able to put that into your design and make sure that you've taken those channels out of that design for that particular area. Again, I think it's going to happen on a decreasingly kind of number of designs that you might do. And I think that's why we wanted to be able to show you what the APs themselves are seeing. Every vendor has a different way of doing their RRM, but what we are seeing across kind of every vendor is their RRM is getting better and better and better as they add more compute to the APs, as they add kind of more intelligence to the RRM algorithms that they use and things like that. We're seeing that more and more, APs won't just sit on a channel and it be horrendous forever. They'll move to a channel, so they're not kind of competing against this kind of non-Wi-Fi interference all the time. Cool. Yes. So with Hamina Wireless, you probably know about us already. You kind of have this whole life cycle, and I think now the nice thing with the cloud vendors is that you're able to bring all that in and then actually visualize what those things are. Cool. So my name's Dan. This is my email address. This is how you can book a call with me. So, gentlemen, if you want to jump on a call, let's do that and we'll talk through it. But yeah, have we got any more questions?
No, it's been really quiet today. We've had no formal questions in Q&A and really just German asking in the chat. So
Okay.
there's 7 minutes left. If anyone has any questions about anything Wi-Fi related,
Yeah,
you've got two CWNEs here ish, and we can always ask German if we need to know a proper answer.
absolutely. Just feel free to raise a hand and I'll unmute you and you can ask your question that way if it's easier.
I was trying to unmute German. I don't have the control. I don't know if you do, Dan.
I probably do somewhere. I'm sure I can figure it out. Here we go. Should we allow Gemma to talk?
Yeah. Oh, he's on
Oh,
another
he's on,
call.
he's on another call. He can't. Okay, shame.
He's gone
Okay,
shy.
he's gone shy. Brilliant. Okay, well, let's not keep you hanging around if you don't need to be. Hopefully that was helpful. Yeah, wanted to give you an understanding of when a spectrum analyzer is going to be useful. I probably think nowadays a spectrum analyzer isn't the most important thing to have all the time. We do have one. We work with a partner, Ossium. You can buy a spectrum analyzer. You can plug it into the Nomad. You can get that information if you need it. I would say for kind of 99% of spaces, especially kind of, office, hospitality, those types of things, if you've got a vendor that has, you know, these kind of good RRM systems, you probably don't need a spectrum analyzer because the AP will just move away from that channel to a channel that's free. I did have a question here. Any threshold alerting? Do we have any threshold alerting? No, we don't. So we're relying on your kind of vendor dashboards to give you that. What we're doing is just showing you the visual impact of that, right? So if you got an alert from your vendor dashboard, you could then come into Hermina, load up your live, see that kind of, you know, blast radius as it was of that impact, and then you could go, okay, well that's not too much of a problem, or okay, this has happened 3 or 4 times now. It's right next to the CEO's office. Maybe we need to put some things in to kind of, you know, mitigate that for future. Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much. If there's no more questions, we'll end it there. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.